in between Pesach and Shavuot, we traditionally count the Omer. It's a period of 7 weeks, or 49 days, 7 weeks of 7 days. And we traditionally, originally, the Omer was an offering that was brought to the temple. But when the temple was destroyed, we nonetheless continued the custom of counting the Omer, counting the time between Pesach and Shavuot, this extraordinary 49-day period that goes between the moment when we were redeemed from Egypt to the moment when we received Torah. The blessing for the counting of the Omer is very simple. It's Al Sefirat HaOmer, which thanks God who commands us to count the Omer. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Sefirat HaOmer. Hayom Shmona Yamim shehem Shavua Echad v'Yom Echad LaOmer. Today is the 8th day, making 1 week and 1 day of the Omer. But so what? When I was a kid, we used to count the Omer and then that was it. There was nothing to it, and so it was very easy to forget the counting of the Omer because it was just almost an obsessive thing that you wake up in the morning, or particularly do it at night before you go to bed. Just count the day. You go, okay, well, I kind of knew that was a day already. So the Kabbalists actually brought in this really fascinating idea of using this as a period of self-reflection. And we're going to be looking at this a lot in tomorrow's Torah study. But very briefly, the Kabbalists had this concept of the Sfirot, the divine emanations of God, of which there are 10, but the top 3 are inaccessible to us, so we can only really experience the bottom 7. And that connects very nicely to the 7 weeks of the Omer and 7 days in each week. So during the period of the Omer, they would relate each of the bottom 7 Sfirot to each other. So today, before Shabbat, before we bring in a new day and count again for the Omer, today's 2 Sfirot are Chesed Sheb'G'vurah. So that's loving kindness in strength. And so what the Kabbalists did was they took each day to reflect on these differing emanations of God and to improve ourselves throughout the period of the Omer. So today we reflect on the idea of loving kindness in strength. So what does that mean? Well, Gevurah in particular is this, it's not just strength like might, like physical might, it's also the strength that's required to limit our impulses. It's the strength that we need to become better people. In Kabbalah, in this Sfirot system, particularly that was brought by Isaac Luria, different Sfirot represent different parts of the body, and Chesed and Gevurah complement each other very nicely. Chesed is the right arm, and that draws us in, essentially, but the left arm is Gevurah, which has the potential to push away. Why would we want to push away? Well, maybe to push away those who make our lives difficult, those who do not draw close to God in a religious sense, are pushed away. But the idea, especially from the prophets, is that God constantly calls to us and tries to bring us near. So there's a balance between these 2 Sfirot in particular today, Chesed and Gevurah. So when we look at this idea of loving kindness in strength, and while we reflect on it for ourselves, for our own personal improvement, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to have loving kindness in strength? What is loving kindness in strength? It's very easy for us to put on a strong outer shell. It's very easy for us, when we are challenged, when we're struggling, to put on a brave face. And sometimes to go even further, to project an image of strength where it's not real. And maybe part of loving kindness and strength is the ability to be kind to ourselves and to say that we don't need to overcompensate, essentially. We can be real in where we are today. Sometimes loving kindness in strength might be looked at a different way. It could be looked at in the sense of it's important for us to be strong. Chazak ve'ematz, be strong and be courageous is the phrase in Torah. In other words, we shouldn't be meek, we shouldn't be humble when we... No, I shouldn't say that we shouldn't be humble. We shouldn't always be so humble that we're self-denying. I think that's a better way to put it. So Chesed Sheb'G'vurah helps us realize that strength can be loving. A show of strength can be very loving, especially when we stand up in the face of oppression, when we stand up in the face of those who do harm. Because if we sit back, if we don't express our strength at those moments when we see other people struggling, then we're not really expressing any form of loving kindness. We're just protecting ourselves from embarrassment, from having to get involved in a difficult situation. So loving kindness in strength can mean that we use our strength in order to help others. We use our strength to show our love, to show our goodness, to show how we can draw people in. Chesed Sheb'G'vurah, loving kindness and strength, can be interpreted in many, many differing ways. It can be interpreted particularly, I think, as the divine strength and the divine love. Sometimes we see extraordinary things in the natural world around us, these moments of raw power, tornadoes, particularly in this country, earthquakes, the strength. But then we also need to find the loving kindness in the world around us as well. In creatures taking care of their own, in supporting each other in a balanced ecosystem. So there are many ways that we can look at Chesed Sheb'G'vurah. And I invite you in the comments to share what loving kindness in strength means to you. We have a lot going on, as always. We have our family service this evening. That's at 5:30. I do encourage you to please come and join us for that. Tomorrow morning, our Torah study looks further in depth at this Kabbalistic idea of the Sfirot and how it relates to the Omer. And if what I've shared today is a little bit confusing, that's wonderful. Come to Torah study and then you'll be able to find out more. And Torah study is on Zoom at the moment. Then we have a Bat Mitzvah ceremony for our Shabbat morning service. And Sunday's Introduction to Reform Judaism gets us ready for Shavuot by asking ourselves, what is revelation? What was actually revealed at Sinai? Is revelation continuous and ongoing, or is it a one-off event? What is it that was actually revealed? Because these questions are really important for us as Reformed Jews. And finally, I want to encourage you, yesterday you will hopefully have seen an email that came out from the COVID Response Committee asking about masking in services and whether or not if we changed the masking policy, whether or not that would bring you to services more or to services less. Please, if you haven't replied to that, please do so. We've only got a few days left for you to reply to that. We've had a lot of replies already. We want as many people in the community as possible to respond so that we can really work out in the COVID Response Committee what it is that we do as we continue to respond to the pandemic. So I hope to see you this evening for our family service, or tomorrow for Torah study, or at our Bat Mitzvah ceremony tomorrow, or at the Introduction to Reform Judaism, or at many of the events that we have coming up in the coming week. And I wish you a Shabbat and a coming week of balancing loving kindness and strength. I wish you Shabbat Shalom.